dawn in the camp was always quiet, but this morning felt different. The cold air hung heavier than usual, carrying a strange tension that crept under every door, every blanket, every breath. Japanese women, POWs, were used to early roll calls, used to the harsh voices of guards echoing across the yard. But today, the guards moved faster, their steps sharper, their expressions unreadable. Then, an officer stepped into the center of the yard. "Form a line," he barked. The women exchanged anxious glances but obeyed. Boots scraped against the ground. No one spoke. And then came the command. The one no one expected. The one that made every heartbeat stumble. "Show us your marks." For a moment, no one understood. Marks? What kind of marks? On their arms? Their backs? Their uniforms? But they all felt the same thing. A cold wave of fear rolling through the line. Some women instinctively crossed their arms over their bodies. Others stepped back without realizing it. A few simply froze, unable to breathe, unable to think. The officer repeated the order, slower this time, as if savoring the tension it created. "Show us your marks." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. No one moved. Not because they refused, but because the fear was paralyzing. What were the guards looking for? Injuries? Bruises? Old wounds? Something else? No explanation. Just the command. A guard stepped forward, scanning the line, waiting for someone, anyone, to comply. And for the first time that morning, every woman realized. Whatever they were about to face, it would not be ordinary. The silence didn't last long. A guard stepped forward, his boots thudding against the wooden floor as he approached the line. The women stiffened. Even those who tried to stay strong felt their breath shorten. The officer raised his clipboard. "Step forward," he ordered, pointing at the first woman in line. She hesitated, just for a second. But that second felt like a lifetime. Her hands shook as she moved, her eyes staring at the ground. The officer circled her like an examiner studying a damaged artifact. "Arms," he said sharply. She lifted her sleeves. Every woman watching leaned forward, terrified of what would happen next. The guard studied her skin, searching, comparing, evaluating. Not a word, not a hint of emotion. "Back," he commanded. She froze. The order cut deeper than any blade. Slowly, she pulled up the back of her shirt. A murmur rippled through the guards, barely audible, but enough to make the rest of the women tense even more. The officer took notes. The next woman was called. Some had old bruises, some had scars from accidents or punishments, some had nothing at all, but even they trembled. And as the process continued, the real reason behind the inspection began to reveal itself. They weren't simply checking injuries. They were looking for patterns. Marks that could identify who had been involved in resistance attempts, escapes, or forbidden contact with other prisoners. The guards needed proof, physical evidence, to decide who would be interrogated next. Every woman in the line suddenly realized what was at stake. A single mark could change everything, and no one knew who the officers suspected or why. One woman in the middle of the line began to shake uncontrollably. She had a mark on her back, a mark she couldn't hide. And as the guards moved closer, her eyes filled with dread. Her turn was coming. The entire room felt the tension tightening like a rope around their throats. Whatever would happen next, everyone feared it might not be something they could endure. The line grew quieter as the guards approached the middle, where she stood. Her name was Aiko. Aiko had kept her secret for months. A mark on her back, not from punishment, not from an accident, but from something far more dangerous in a POW camp. A symbol used by prisoners who tried to communicate in secret. Only a few women knew about it. Even fewer understood what it meant. But the guards must have learned something. Maybe someone talked. Maybe someone was forced to talk. Now they were searching specifically for it. Aiko's breathing grew uneven. Her hands shook so violently she had to clasp them behind her back to hide it. One guard pointed at her. "You, step forward." Her stomach dropped. Aiko stepped out of the line, each movement stiff and unnatural. She felt dozens of eyes on her. Women silently begging her to stay calm, guards watching for any sign of guilt. The officer with the clipboard approached her. "Arms!" he demanded. Aiko raised them. Her sleeves fell back, revealing only unmarked skin. The officer nodded, unimpressed. He circled her. "Turn." Aiko turned. "Lift the back of your shirt." She froze. That was the moment she feared. The moment she could no longer avoid. Her hands lifted slowly, painfully slowly, as if every inch felt like another step toward destruction. She closed her eyes. The fabric rose, just enough for the mark to be visible. The reaction was immediate. The guard closest to her leaned in, eyes narrowing. The officer stepped forward sharply. Someone in the background muttered, "There, that's it." Aiko felt her knees weaken. The officer tapped the clipboard sharply. "Bring her." The room erupted with movement. 2 guards grabbed her arms. The rest of the women gasped, but only under their breath. No one dared to speak. Aiko tried to stay upright, but fear made her legs almost collapse. The officer didn't shout. He didn't threaten. His calm, cold voice was worse than any scream. "You've been hiding something," he said, "and now you will explain it." Aiko's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. She looked back at the line, at the terrified faces of the other women, and understood one thing. Whatever interrogation awaited her, it would determine far more than just her own fate. Aiko was dragged across the yard, her feet stumbling over the uneven ground. The other women watched in terrified silence until the door slammed behind her. Inside, the air felt colder. The interrogation room was small, just a wooden table, a single chair, and a dim lamp hanging overhead. The shadows it cast were sharp and unforgiving. The walls, bare and echoing, made every breath sound too loud. The guards pushed Aiko into the chair. The officer with the clipboard entered last, closing the door slowly behind him. He didn't need to raise his voice. The stillness in the room gave him all the power he needed. "Show me the mark again," he said calmly. Aiko's fingers trembled as she lifted the back of her shirt once more. The officer leaned in, studying the faint symbol carefully. A small, curved line intersected by another, subtle enough to be mistaken for an accidental scar, but clear enough to someone who knew what to look for. "So, it is the same pattern," he murmured. Aiko's heart sank. He walked around her slowly. "This mark, it's been found on 3 prisoners before you, all of them involved in exchanging messages, all of them questioned." Aiko swallowed hard. "I don't know anything about—" He slammed his hand on the table. "Do not lie." Her voice died instantly. The officer sat down across from her, folding his hands neatly. "You're going to tell me who used this symbol? Who taught you? Who else carries it?" Aiko stared at the floor. Her pulse hammered painfully in her chest. If she spoke, she would condemn the women who trusted her. If she stayed silent, the punishment would be severe. She knew that all too well. The officer leaned closer. "Someone gave you this mark. Someone you worked with. Someone you're protecting." Aiko raised her head slowly, meeting his gaze. "I'm not protecting anyone," she whispered. He observed her closely, searching for cracks in her resolve. "So, you say." He nodded to the guards. They grabbed her arms again, pulling her upright. "Until you tell the truth," the officer said, "you will remain under special confinement." Aiko felt the cold grip of fear tightening around her throat, but somewhere deep inside, another feeling flickered. Determination. If she broke, others would suffer. If she endured, she might buy them all a little more time. As the guards dragged her out of the room, she realized one thing. This wasn't just about a mark on her back. It was about loyalty, and how much she was willing to sacrifice to protect the others. Night fell over the camp like a heavy blanket, smothering every sound. The barracks were silent, but no one slept. Aiko had been taken to a confinement shed, a small, windowless structure near the fence. The women could see only its dark outline from their bunks, but knowing she was inside made the night feel colder. Hours passed. Then, suddenly, footsteps echoed outside. The door of the shed opened. 2 guards emerged. and between them, Aiko. She wasn't dragged this time. She wasn't stumbling. She walked on her own, exhausted but upright, her face pale but steady. The guards escorted her back toward the barracks. The other women immediately stood, forming a silent corridor for her return. Aiko stepped inside. Every pair of eyes searched her face for answers, for hope, for a sign of what awaited them next. She lowered herself onto a bunk, her voice barely above a whisper. They know about the symbol. They think it's used for message passing. A murmur spread through the room. One woman asked, trembling, "Did you tell them anything?" Aiko shook her head. "No, and I won't." The women stared at her, not just with fear now, but with respect. A quiet kind of courage radiated from her, even as her hands trembled from the cold. Then she said something none of them expected. "They're planning another inspection at dawn. This time, they'll search everyone." A tense silence filled the barracks. Aiko continued, her voice steady now. "But the symbol wasn't meant to expose us. It wasn't a message. It was a reminder." "A reminder of what?" someone whispered. Aiko looked at them, every frightened, exhausted face. "That we're not alone." The room fell completely silent. For months, the women had lived in fear, isolated, believing survival meant staying invisible. But now, something shifted. Fear didn't disappear, but it bent, reshaped, hardened into resolve. They wouldn't fight, they wouldn't rebel, but they would endure, together. The next morning, when the guards stormed inside for the second inspection, they found something unexpected. The women stood taller, calmer, their eyes no longer hollow with fear. The officers noticed the change immediately, a quiet defiance they couldn't understand and couldn't break. Aiko stood in the middle of the line once again. She met the officer's gaze without looking away. He studied her for a moment, irritated by something he couldn't name. The way she held herself, the way the others now mirrored her quiet strength. But he said nothing. The inspection continued. Hours later, the guards left with nothing new discovered. No confessions, no collapse, no broken spirits. Aiko's mark remained the only one, the only mystery they couldn't solve. And in the end, that was enough. Because in a place built to break them, the women found something worth holding on to: unity. Aiko didn't save the camp. She didn't overthrow anyone. But she protected the women who stood beside her, not with force, but with courage. And sometimes, in a world ruled by fear, quiet courage is the strongest resistance of all.